Good morning. Welcome to Member Focus Monday. I'm Christina Schaefer, Social Media Manager for HAR, and I'm joined by Patrick Jankowski. Welcome.
Thanks, Christina. It's good to be on again.
Thank you. Thank you for coming back to chat with us. We always enjoy getting your updates, and we put a lot of weight into what you say. So, of course, we have a lot of questions for you this morning. As we're going through, if you have questions for Patrick, type them into the comments, and we'll get to those. But if we could start off, Patrick, I know you're the Senior VP of Research for the Greater Houston Partnership, but can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, as the Senior VP of Research, I manage a team of 5 absolutely incredible research professionals. We provide all the economic, demographic, and business analysis that the partnership needs to pursue its mission. If there is a company we're trying to recruit from outside the region, we put together the data for the RFP. There might be a bill that's up in the legislature when we're working public policy. We might do a little bit of economic analysis of that. When our CEO goes out to make presentations, we'll put together the presentations. And one of the things we do is like what I'm doing right now. We try to provide insights to the community as what's going on in the economy and what's going on with the population.
Yes, that's wonderful. And you can tell us more about that a little later on. You actually have a monthly newsletter that you put out that people can sign up for as well. So we'll share a little bit about that later on. So, every time you come on, you give us some really good insight. Last time you were on, we were talking about, is there going to be a recession? Of course, that was before COVID, and we knew anything about COVID happening. So we talked a lot about that the last time you were on. So we're here now. We have been dealing with this pandemic in the Houston area for about the last 8 months or so. Can you tell us, because we see a lot of the national headlines, right, about the effect on unemployment and the effect on the economy. Can you tell us how, in Houston specifically, the economy has been affected by the pandemic?
Okay, well, the first thing to say is the worst months, are behind us, and that they're actually pretty far behind us. The worst months were March and April, and in that period of time, we lost 350,000 jobs. To kind of put that in perspective, I've been around since the 80s. I lived through the 80s downturn. In the 80s downturn, we only lost 212,000 jobs. So as absolute numeric numbers, it was much worse than the one we went through in the 80s. That 350,000, that was like losing 1 in every 9 jobs in the region. Since then, we have recouped about 142,000 of those, but you see that still leaves us with about 210,000 left to go. We started prior to the downturn at 3.2 million jobs in the region. We fell below 3 million jobs. It's kind of a benchmark that we like to measure by. Mm-hmm. And we're just shy of 3 million jobs now. So hopefully when the next job numbers come out, and job numbers will come out actually this Friday we'll find out what happened in October. We'll be back above 3 million and we'll see some additional growth.
Wonderful. Thank you. So as you know, we put out a monthly market update to recap the Houston housing market. But you guys keep an eye on commercial and new construction. Can you tell us how those markets are doing?
Sure. I'll do that in a minute. I'm going to want to go back and talk a little bit more about employment too. So let's make sure we don't forget that.
Yeah, definitely.
A economic downturn always makes it hard on commercial real estate. The problem is Houston was struggling even prior to the downturn. It shouldn't come as any surprise to anybody out there who's in the real estate business to know that we were overbuilt in the office market. And now we've just hit the tipping point where we're overbuilt in the industrial market, and multifamily is also overbuilt. God, sounds like I'm just being so negative. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just trying to be realistic.
Yeah.
If you look at, there are all sorts of different ways you measure the office market, and there's a vacancy rate, there's a availability rate. And if you look at a company like JLL, they measure it one way. You look at someone like NAI or CBRE, they measure it another way. But if you just want a general rule of thumb, about 25% of all office space in the region is either vacant or soon to be vacant. So you're looking at over 50 million square feet of available space. I mean, that's absolutely incredible. We haven't built very much lately. We're kind of in a little surge right now, but most of that's because it's build to suit. But we need to really stop building office for us to get this resolved. If you want to look at the industrial space, it seems like what we did, I'm sorry, if you see me every down, those who are watching, if you see me look down, I've got a lot of numbers and it's hard for me to keep them in my head. So I'm going to have to look down at the numbers every now and then. If you look at industrial space, right now we've only got about 15 million square feet under construction, but we've already delivered over 20 million square feet this year. And in normal year, in a good year, we can absorb 8 to 10 million square feet. So through the first 9 months, we've already delivered twice what we can normally absorb. And we still got another 15 million square feet under construction. You talk about vacancy rates, so forth, but probably the key vacancy rate to think about is Class A space. That is the prime space. That's also the stuff which is new, which is built. It's got the best amenities. The vacancy rate for Class A space in Houston over the last 12 months has gone from 12.5% to a little over 18%. So you're looking at almost 1 in every 5 square feet of the best space out there now is vacant. That should be more like the vacancy rate. In an ideal market, you want to see the industrial rate below 10%. Actually, you want to see it around 6 or 7%. Retail is actually doing okay. It was doing okay going into the pandemic. We'll see how it comes out. You need to be careful. Retail, you guys are in the real estate business. You know what I'm talking about. But when I talk to retail people outside of that, they think it's all stores. But retail will be office. Well, not office. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Retail will be restaurants. It'll be nail salons. It'll be the dry cleaners, the little strip centers, and so forth. So it's not purely retail. Mm-hmm. The retail vacancy rate in the last year has ticked up about 1%. It's at 6.4% right now, which is not too bad. We don't have a whole lot of retail space under construction, but just as I drive around town, as I go to my local Randall's or Kroger, or I simply drive down Westheimer, mm-hmm. and I look and I see spaces that I knew there was something in 6 months ago that isn't there now. Right. So I don't think retail is going to be quite as bad as office is, but retail has some challenges as well. Those of you who have heard me speak before, you probably know I've really come down on multifamily because it just won't stop. I'm gonna have to go and look at some notes in a moment and pull up my multifamily numbers for you. Sorry, I've got a lot of pieces of paper here, guys, because there's a lot of things I wanted to talk about. I was real happy that Christina let me prepare some notes beforehand. Okay, right now under construction, we have 17,000 multifamily units under construction. Okay, over the last 12 months, we've added 23,000 multifamily units. So we're looking at a period over 2 years of adding close to 40,000 apartment units. If you go back to the boom years in like 2013, 2014, we were able to absorb about 12,000, 13,000. So we've got 3 times the number we absorbed back in the boom, either under construction or about to hit the market. And that's affecting rates as well. You hear about all these rates, but really what you want to look at with the multifamily is the concessions. And once again, I'm going to go back to Class A. Mm-hmm. Class A is the newest property. It should be commanding the highest premium. It should be affecting new construction. Right now, 65% of all Class A apartment units have an incentive attached to them. So think about that. If you're having to provide an incentive, either reduced rent mm-hmm. or waiving a security deposit or some other incentive, you're overbuilt. So I say that if you're a tenant, this is a great time to be a tenant. If you're representing tenants, you really have a lot of leverage out there. It's not a good time to be a landlord, and it'll take a while. I think the industrial will probably heal first. I don't think retail will get quite that bad. I don't know what's ever going to stop multifamily. Office, we still have a few more years to go. I know that's kind of a long-winded answer, but you asked about retail, you asked about commercial, and there are 4 segments out there. So that's how I thought I'd hit it up.
It's a big question.
It is a big question, and yes. It's an important part of Houston's economy.
It is. We've heard a lot about...
I'm going to sip some Earl Grey if you don't mind.
Go for it. We've heard a lot about the cost of lumber and that's effect. Realtors have told us, pricing of new construction homes is much, much higher. So do you think that is taking an effect on these other markets as well?
No, not really. The single family market is unique. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's benefiting from a couple of things. I'm preaching to the choir. The very low interest rates have really helped. Another thing that's helped is that the pandemic, the unemployment has affected those at the lower end of the wage scale the most. Mm-hmm. And those tend to be renters. Those don't tend to be buyers. And also there's this sense that we may be working from home, or even when we go back to the office, there'll be a hybrid. So
Hmm.
I want to have a better work environment. So there are people who are moving to try to find a nicer place. Uh, Anecdotally, I'm hearing about how it's getting harder to sell or lease in the inner city because it's really cool living in the inner city if you can walk out your door and walk to a bar. But if all the bars are closed and the restaurants are closed, maybe you want a backyard or maybe you want to be next to a park.
Right. Makes perfect sense. So you already told us a little bit about unemployment, kind of overview, which is why we love to have you on, because as you said, we do the numbers for, the housing market, but the 40,000 foot overview is what we like to hear from you too. And in Houston, there's so many different sectors, as you mentioned. Is there a particular sector that's doing better or worse than others? Any that you're really excited about, or any that are really concerning you?
Yeah, well, this goes back to what I said a moment ago. I want to talk to you a little bit more about the employment numbers, and it shows
Mm-hmm.
up in the employment numbers. If you go back to the beginning of the pandemic, the sectors which were hit the hardest were, well, some of it's obvious. It's the restaurants and the bars. Healthcare was hit pretty hard. Construction was hit hard, even though construction was considered one of those essential industries. Retail obviously was hit hard, and it's a broad category called personal services. But personal services is where the hair salons, the barber shops, the nail salons, the repair shops, and all those fall in.
Mm-hmm.
Those five sectors right there accounted for over 250,000 jobs lost. And so those are the ones which suffered the most. Unfortunately, energy is still suffering. And there's a category in manufacturing. You have two types of manufacturing. You've got something called durable goods and non-durable goods. It's the easier way to think of it. Durable good is something which is more permanent.
Mm-hmm.
Non-durable is something which is easily consumed. In Houston, most of the durable goods manufacturing is tied to the oil and gas industry. So you can look at durable good manufacturing, and unfortunately, real estate is struggling. Here I'm talking about, and I'm not sure why real estate is struggling. It may be that there are other things lumped into that category. Um, it's funny the way the government does this. Sometimes they lump things in that don't make much sense.
Mm-hmm.
And in the real estate category is also the category of rental of equipment. And I'm thinking that maybe some of the losses we're seeing are in the rental of equipment and not in real estate. So, those sectors are the ones that I told you which ones were the hardest hit, which ones are
Mm-hmm.
still struggling. The ones that seem to be doing the best right now, and we're measuring it by the jobs have recouped of their original losses, was non-durable goods manufacturing. One of the things you can see in non-durable goods will be paper products. You'll see food processing is in there, things of that nature. Retail has actually gotten back about 3/4 of the jobs that it lost.
That's
And
great.
so it's actually done fairly well. If you look at finance and insurance, that's actually employment is higher now in finance and insurance than it's ever been. So it never really lost jobs and it's continued to grow. There's another group out there called professional science, scientific and technical services. Think of these are white collar occupations.
Mm-hmm.
This is accounting, this is law, this is computer programming, this is marketing, consulting, and so forth. That's got back about 3/4 of all the jobs it's lost. And the sectors I just said, those are things which can be performed remotely. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to have the face-to-face interaction. And there's a kind of an odd category called administrative support services. And that includes two things. One of it includes contract workers. And we always see that start to pick up during a recovery because companies may be reluctant to bring someone on full time, but they'll bring someone on contract.
Mm.
But it also includes janitorial services. And so part of that may be that we're having to clean things more often, that we're starting to see growth there. So that kind of puts, the sectors that are still struggling or they're hurting the most right now are the energy sector, wholesale trade. The sectors that have done the best are non-durable good manufacturing, retail, finance and insurance, professional services, and this contract worker sort.
Okay. So those sectors that are struggling, our economy is so tied to oil and gas in Houston specifically. Those sectors that are struggling, do you see an end in sight?
Well, let's talk specifically about energy.
Mm-hmm.
Energy will never be the driver it was for Houston's economy.
Mm-hmm.
The best days of the energy industry, unfortunately, are behind us. It's traditional energy. Now, I have high hopes for Energy 2.0, but as far as the traditional production of hydrocarbons, it's still going to be important, but it won't be the driver. we keep a track of layoffs at the partnership. We've got a database we maintain, and there have been a lot of layoffs, but we've identified layoffs at over 40 oil and gas companies in the Houston region just since March.
Wow.
The oil and gas industry has lost, if you look at combination of what would be lost in the manufacturing and the oilfield services, I'm thinking manufacturing, oilfield service, and exploration, we're looking at close to 30,000 job losses. We're probably still going to see some additional losses as some of the layoffs which have been announced recently have not shown up in the data. We'll still see layoffs in oil and gas into next year. The unfortunate thing about that is on one hand, it's the major consumer of office space out there. It's still a lot of, so we'll probably see more office space thrown back on the market. Also, the industrial space or warehouse space, the manufacturing of the equipment, the storage of equipment consumes some of the, so that's going to have some implications for real estate. And also there are a lot of companies out there that have very high debt burdens, and they're struggling. So that, I don't see that doing well. But if you look at, here I am, I'm rambling. I'm sorry, Christina.
No, you're good.
I'm going on and on. The sectors I think they're going to probably do the best are the ones that are doing well now, or the ones that are tied to the ability to provide a service that you don't have to be in a face-to-face direct interaction, like professional services, like finance and insurance, and so forth.
Yeah.
So that's it. Did I answer your question, or did I just ramble too long?
You did. No, that was a great answer. We actually have a question from Connie. She said, do you feel that the inner city will pick back up once we're past COVID and restaurants, sports, and bars all reopen?
I will, but the question is, how long will that take? We have this great news out here about both Pfizer and Moderna have vaccines. And when we have these vaccines, so there's some hope out there. And we're also seeing a number of people, people are more willing to wear masks. The problem is it'll be a while before we get up to a certain level of, what would I say, not herd immunity, but where people feel comfortable going out.
Yeah.
And so it could be mid part of next year before we start feeling comfortable enough to go out in public and do that. And so it will come back, but I say it's going to be at least 6 months before it does.
Okay, thank you. So there were a lot of questions and speculation on both sides of the aisle as to the impact the 46th president of the United States would have on the economy. So what are your thoughts on how the presidential election will affect the economy? And also, will the delay of transition of power have an effect?
Okay, let me answer the second question first.
Okay.
It will have a delay, but not a significant delay, because the president-elect is assembling a cabinet. He's already talked to people. He's very smart. There are things that he doesn't know as far as day-to-day, but he's been in the office before. He was vice president for 8 years. He knows how the government works. He knows the levers to pull and so forth. And so it'll have some impact, but it won't have as maybe a dramatic impact as we're seeing occurring in the media. But it needs to take place. As far as the impact will have on the economy, let's talk specifically about Houston's economy. And I may be talking energy to death, but I think that's the one that everyone's most interested in right now. Part of what's going to happen with the new president will depend upon whether the Democrats control the Senate or not. If the Democrats control the Senate, there are things that he can do legislatively. If the Democrats don't control the Senate, it'll have to be by executive order. But we've already seen some of these things. President-elect Biden has already said that we will rejoin the Paris Climate Accords. That's important, if nothing else, symbolically. Most people don't realize the Paris Climate Accords are a set of goals, but there's no enforcement mechanism in there. It's incumbent upon each individual country to enforce their own goals. I suspect that President-elect will go and renegotiate mileage standards and emission standards for vehicles. We will see either a slowing down or a halting of leasing on federal lands. Now, I need to let oil leases, but I need to let you know that's a little bit different for Texas, because there's not a whole lot of federal land in Texas. Most of the federal land that is in Texas is primarily state parks and national parks and military bases. There's a lot more leasing of land in places like New Mexico. And one of the reasons why, a little bit of a history lesson, it actually goes back to how Texas joined the Union. It was something that Sam Houston insisted upon when we were negotiating to join the Union, because we were an independent republic, that all the lands that were considered national lands for the Republic of Texas became state lands for the Republic of Texas. So our state lands did not revert, and so the state leases land to drill on, and so it won't have quite a big an impact as it would on other states. The thing is, one thing that the president-elect could do, they talk about, is putting additional restrictions on methane emissions. So, Christine, are you still hearing me?
I am still hearing you. There was a little freeze in your video, but we could hear you the whole time.
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't know why it froze, guys. I'm running off an Ethernet cable, and normally that doesn't cause a problem. I'm gonna talk until Christina tells me to stop talking. So how's that?
That's great.
I can see there being an increased scrutiny on interstate pipelines. Now that's interstate. That's not intrastate. We'll probably see maybe even a ban on fracking on federal lands. And so it'll definitely affect the energy industry, but so much of what takes place here takes place in the state, so it won't have as severe an impact as it would in other states.
Okay.
Now, step back, that's just energy. There are other sectors to think about. One is a significant part of Houston's economy is tied to exports. And what we're expecting the president-elect to do is not to pull back very much on China, maybe tone down the rhetoric, but not to pull back on the restrictions, because I think a lot of people out there finally realize that the Chinese have not been have not played nice when it comes to intellectual property. And also Biden made some promises to the unions and to the manufacturing that's out there. So I don't think that's going to change, and that'll be good in one way. Be good, maybe bad. The other thing, though, is I think what you're going to see is Biden will get more engaged in trade negotiations, and rather than unilaterally pulling out of them, we'll go back to negotiating them, which would be good for Houston. If you want to look at healthcare, there's talk about expanding healthcare, some sort of Medicaid for all, or expanding the Affordable Care Act or so forth. You need to understand, in Houston, 1 in 5 Houstonians does not have health insurance. We're looking at 1.4 million Houstonians who don't have health insurance. So if there's some way, and a lot of those fall on the charity aspects of the local hospitals. So if that came across, well, on one hand, people might think it would be bad. On the other hand, it would allow more people to get health care. Yeah. So I can see a lot of positives coming out of this administration, but some concerns about what's going on with energy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We had a question come in from Nellie. She said, what about the impacts or changes on the water initiatives?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what we mean by a water initiative.
If we could maybe reword that, Nellie, we can make sure that we ask that. So I always like to get your projections. Just, again, you're able to look at so many different sectors and give us an idea of what to expect. And, you know, nobody likes big surprises, right? So what are your projections for the final quarter of 2020 and maybe even your outlook into 2021?
Okay, we always see job growth in the fourth quarter. Even during a recession, we see job growth. Part of it is what's associated with the holidays, and part of it is companies wrapping up to try to deal with year-end contracts and budgets and so forth like that. This year is different, though. You're not going to see holiday parties. You're not going to see big shindigs and restaurants. And so we will see some growth, but we're not going to see the same sort of growth that we've seen in the past. There are years when we've added as many as 30 or 40,000 jobs in the fourth quarter. I suspect we'll probably add half that many. We will add jobs next year, but it's going to depend upon how quickly the vaccine gets rolled out and how willing people are to take the vaccine. There was a survey that was done by the Pew Institute, and it asked questions: are you likely, or were you definitely, are you likely, were you definitely not, or likely not? And it was split about 50-50 between those who either definitely would or likely would and those who wouldn't. The problem is the vaccine has gotten politicized, and so people are reluctant to take it. And people are concerned about that it's been rushed through so quickly, maybe it's unsafe. I bring all that up because the pace of the recovery in 2021 will depend upon how quickly the vaccine gets rolled out how willing people are to take it, and how soon we get back to some level of herd immunity or some level of comfort of going about things more normal the way they used to be.
Right.
It's interesting. These are things I'm looking at right now. I'm looking at them every day. The partnership, we actually have our economic outlook event, which is coming up, and it's something I will have more data and be able to address in more detail at our outlook event. You know, for those of you out there, it's going to be on December 8th. It's going to be a virtual event. You can go to the partnership's website. We've got the easiest web address in the world to remember. It's houston.org. Go to the events. If you're a member of the partnership, if your firm's a member, you can attend for free. If you're not a member, it's only $25. But one of the things you get for that is you will be emailed the document, the hard copy of all my analysis on the economy, and you can use that and factor that in your planning for next year. Definitely there'll be job growth next year, but I'm not ready to release a number yet because I'm still looking at it. But even whatever job growth we have next year, you need to realize we're still over 200,000 jobs in the hole. We're not going to make that up in a single year.
With companies like Tesla and Amazon, you know, building locations in the Houston area, do you see that having a significant impact, or is that maybe more of just a big name and it's going to do a little help here and there? But do you see that having a significant impact?
It all helps. It's tough when you hear one of the major oil companies in Houston is going to lay off close to 2,000 employees. That is hard to replace those 2,000 employees. And the energy industry, frankly, it pays very well in Houston. It is the best paid industry. And it's one of the challenges we're facing at the partnership. We are actively recruiting. We're going to the East Coast. We're going to the West Coast. We're going up to the Great Lakes area, trying to convince companies to expand into Houston.
Right.
But the challenge is when the average compensation in the oil and gas industry is above $100,000 a year. And so it's difficult to replace those jobs. So getting back to your question about Amazon and Tesla, yes, they help. It all helps. We need jobs across the full spectrum, but we really need to be bringing in just anything and everything we can to help find jobs for those 208,000 people who are not working, who were working back in February.
Do big names like Amazon and Tesla help the partnership when trying to recruit companies?
Oh, yeah, it's great. Well, a year ago, we did not have Amazon or Microsoft or, God, who's the other one? Or Google's name on any building in Houston. Now we do. They are slowly beginning to realize how important Houston is and the sort of work that goes on here. You know, God, once again, I'm going back to the oil and gas industry. They're problem solvers. They're engineers. They're very bright people. And they're realizing that they can leverage those same set of skills here in Houston. So we're very actively recruiting what we refer to as the innovation industries, trying to bring them in. The challenge is when you look at someone like Sonova, which I think employs about 400 people in Houston, and Exxon, which employed at one time 20,000. It takes a lot of Sonovas to make up for one Exxon.
Yeah. Absolutely. We have a few questions. I know we just have a little more time with you. We have a few questions from our members. Hina's asking if you believe the interest rates will still remain low.
The Fed has signaled that. You can look at the interest rates two ways. One thing, the low interest rates supports the economy. A movement in the interest rates either slows down or speeds up the economy. It also sends the Fed sending a signal about economic strength. The Fed said they're going to maintain interest rates low for the next 12 to 18 months. So I think interest rates will remain very low.
Okay.
I don't want anybody calling me on this, but yes, I am refinancing my house. I finally figured it's time to do it. So, and I already have someone lined up to do it for me. So please don't call me.
There you go. I know you have a realtor on speed dial, so that's probably helping you out. So there's a question here about immigration. So any feeling about how changes in immigration policy might impact the Houston economy?
That's a very good question. You know, Christina, next time we do this, I wish I could show you some slides. Maybe we might need to do that because it's very interesting what's happened with immigration in Houston, what's happened with population. As I've been reading through a lot of reports, and one of the things people always default back to, well, Houston's had this great population growth, and Houston's population will continue to grow. So we're confident with population growth, we'll continue to have the demand for office space or for retail or for multifamily or for the warehouse industrial space. We're not growing at the rate we used to grow. And there's three components to growth, and one of them was called a natural rate of increase, which is more babies being born than people passing away.
Mm-hmm.
There's what's called net domestic migration, where you have people move into Houston and then move out of Houston. And on net, we have a positive, and that's like moving from Chicago into Houston or from Houston to LA. But on the net, we have a positive. And there's also something called international migration, where someone who lives overseas has moved to Houston or moved back.
Mm-hmm.
The rate of the natural increase has been slowing. Domestic migration for Harris County has been negative the last 3 years in a row. International migration, though, has been fairly strong. And we continue to bring 30 to 40,000 people from overseas in every year. And so getting back to the original question about immigration,
Mm-hmm.
international migration is so important to this economy. For one thing, in just the sense of population growth, but all the talent it brings in. As I walk down my street and I talk to my neighbors, here I live in the energy corridor. Half of my neighbors have foreign accents, and I talk to them, and they're from the Ukraine, or they're from England,
Mm-hmm.
or they're from Germany, or they're from Venezuela or someplace. And so immigration is very important. One, to bring the talent in, and one just for general population growth. And it just makes Houston a richer place. We would not have this incredible restaurant scene we have if all we were doing was eating down-home food. Not that I have anything against a chicken fried steak, but every now and then I like some Asian fusion.
There we go. Very good. So a few more questions popped up, and we'll take as many as we can because I know you have something else to get to after this. Somebody is asking about a potential C word, and I'll go ahead and say it, but Veronica said, do you think any major Texas cities will have some sort of real estate crash?
No.
I like that answer. All right, we'll take it. Nishan asked, what do you think about land prices in Houston and the Houston area market? Do you have any thoughts there?
Gosh, I have not studied that enough
Mm-hmm.
to know. I do know there at the rate we're building houses, we may be challenged to get enough lots on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
but I've not studied enough to be able to answer meaningfully. So I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Harold is asking a question. You've already told us a little bit about commercial real estate. We've talked a little bit about residential real estate, but he's just saying, do you have any forecasting comparisons between residential and commercial real estate in 2021? So any thoughts on what to expect in those markets?
Residential, both resale and new construction, should remain strong well into next year. The office market, we will likely see the availability rate creep up as these companies merge. We've seen a number of mergers as they lay people off. They're going to reassess their space needs, and we'll see that go up. Multifamily, we're overbuilding, but we're starting to see maybe a bit of a slowdown. Multifamily will remain soft. Retail, I'm not as concerned about retail as maybe some others are. And as far as warehouse industrial, that's the one I'm probably most worried about right now because we're still building a lot. And that's one of those where I've read so many broker reports. I say, well, Houston's strong population growth. We should continue to be able to lease this space for warehouse and so forth. We're not going to get the level of population. Think about it. The thing that drives population in Houston more than anything else is the job market. Mm-hmm. People come here to find work. And right now we're not generating enough jobs even for the people who live here already. So we're not going to have the same level of population. So if you want to get back, thumbs up on residential, thumbs down. Oh, thumbs down. That sounds good. I feel good about residential. I don't feel as good about office. Industrial is the one I'm most concerned with. I'm okay with retail. Mm-hmm. Multifamily, that's on another planet. They just don't read the market signals and continue to build.
Okay. There's a question here about the opportunity zones in Houston. I don't know how much you know about those programs, but there was a question about what you think will happen with the opportunity zones, and do you think they will expand those programs?
That's another thing that I'm familiar with them, but I haven't studied them. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to comment on something that I have not studied.
Okay. So I think I have two more questions that I want to ask that are, I think, good questions to end on here. Connie first of all, she said this is great information. Is there anything that individuals and companies can do to help boost their economy and promote a more stable economy?
A couple things. For one thing that, and it's hard to put this. One of the keys to economic growth in Houston's future is going to be our ability to have an educated workforce.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing economic development work at the partnership for over 35 years. And when I first started working at the partnership, back then it was the Chamber of Commerce. My boss was Louis Welch, if anybody remembers Louis Welch. When we'd work a project, people would say, the company would say, do you have a piece of real estate and is it rail served? And that was the driving force. Mm-hmm. Now when we work with these companies, whether it's Google or Amazon or Microsoft, or they want to know something about the workforce, and they want to know about their educational attainment and their ability for them to continue to get training. So much of Houston's growth is going to depend upon an educated workforce. So the extent to which you can support an educated workforce, part of it is encourage your employees to get work. Part of it is, I wish things would get resolved with HISD. Because the confusion at HISD is something which is not helping this economy, and it's not helping us grow a workforce. That's probably the most important thing you can do for the long-term growth is whatever we can to make sure we have a well-educated workforce.
Okay, very good. And another question here is advice for realtors. What approach would you take if you were a realtor in Houston to prepare for 2021?
Gosh, it depends upon whether you're a commercial or residential realtor. Mm-hmm. I have to be careful and not sound. Here I'm an economist. Sometimes I wear an analytical hat. Sometimes I wear a marketing hat. Sometimes I wear a pure Chamber of Commerce hat. And I need to be careful that what I say doesn't sound pure Chamber of Commerce. But I've lived in this city all my life. I've studied it all my adult life. I've tried to share the information that I learned. The thing is, this is a tough time, but we've been through so many tough times before. My thing is not to get discouraged. Houston will come out of this. It's come out of every recession it's ever been in. The economy has looked stronger. So the thing is not to get, in spite of maybe some of the depressing stats I've shared, mm-hmm. Houston's not going to fall off a cliff. We are going to grow again. It might take a little bit more work this time than past time. But the thing is, just stick with it and don't give up on the city. This is an incredible city. So
that's wonderful. Thank you. So you already mentioned this, but if we could repeat it, someone's asking any expectation on when oil and gas can come back to speed, 2021, 2024. So you already kind of mentioned this, that you don't expect it to fully go back to what it was.
So is this someone looking to lease space or looking to find a job?
I'm not sure.
The challenge is next year, on average, if you look at global oil consumption, will average about 3 million barrels a day, still below where it was pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. If you talk there's a survey done by the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas of energy executives in the southern U.S., and 2/3 of them think that U.S. production will never get back to the level it was prior to COVID. So when you talk about when will oil return, I think oil will probably hit some sort of stability next year, mm-hmm. probably by mid-year. But I think job growth is going to be a way off. And, I hadn't thrown the number out yet, but we've lost almost 100,000 energy jobs in Houston since 2014. We will never get back to the level of employment we were in 2014. We might add in a year a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there. But the energy industry is going to look very different going forward in Houston. It remains important, mm-hmm. but it's not going to be the driver. And I'm hoping a stability by the middle of next year.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Do you have any final words for our members based on everything we've talked about today?
Oh, gosh, December 8th, go to the partnership's website, houston.org, go to the events section. If you're a member, it's free. I'll be sharing some additional insights, and if you sign up after the event, you'll be emailed the copy of the forecast. If you're not, it's just $25. Mm-hmm. And I guess the other thing is to say, I joke how much I joke about this. Maybe I've used this anecdote before, but it's great. I've got an adult son who lives 2 blocks away, mm-hmm. and we always talk about the economy. And he asked me the other day, Dad, how do you feel about the economy? And I said, well, Philip, I'm concerned, but I'm not overly concerned because this is the sixth downturn I've been through. And my son says, well, Dad, this is my third. And it's hard to think this is my son in his mid-30s going through his third downturn.
Mm-hmm.
These things happen. It's real painful if you lose your job, but we always emerge from these. Sometimes we emerge fairly quickly. Sometimes it takes a while, but we'll get through this.
Yes. Great. Thank you so much. And so many people are thanking you for this great information. And I will say that when Patrick and I spoke last week, he told me there would be new data available in March. So we already have him booked for the first Monday in April. So April 5th, Patrick will be coming back to give us some new data then. And we really appreciate you always coming back to talk with us.
Christina, I enjoy it. And for all you people out there who are selling real estate, stick with it. It's there may be some challenges out there, but we'll get through it. We always have.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you. So next week we will not have a Member Focus Monday as it is Thanksgiving week, but we will be back the following Monday to talk about cybersecurity. So be sure to mark your calendars for that. So we'll see you then. Have a great week. Bye-bye.